Well, hello there guys, and welcome back to the channel. As is basically tradition by now, this is like the second time of me recording this, but this time it wasn't that it didn't have any voice recorded over it. This time it was that I ran out of space on my hard drive, so it stopped in the middle. So I'm just redoing it. So we have gone through all the 2021 champions ranked, and then we have done the worst 16 buffs of 2021. Now we're going to be taking a look at top 15 buff champions. And this is a very hard list to make, because in reality, every single one of the champions that I'm going to be talking about is going to be somebody's favorite buff. Every single champion that I'm going to mention, somebody's going to think they have to be ranked up higher or the highest. And therefore, I urge people to remember that this is not some sort of factual list of award ceremony or anything of the sort. This is merely my personal opinion, my view of the game, the way I see these champions currently in the game. A lot of that is subject to change. Should I happen to make this list 2 months down the line, I'm sure I would jiggle plenty of champions around as well to a degree, based on, you know, new information, new content being released, how they are performing, so on and so forth. This is just kind of a snapshot of my view on the game right now in regards of these champions, and that is it. I'm not trying to insult you, your intelligence, your family's honor, or your knowledge about these champions, so on and so forth. This is just me explaining how I see them. That being said, let's get to it. So we need to start at spot number 15, and in spot number 15 I'm gonna put in a champion that just got buffed recently, and the buff was incredibly scuffy. Now initially he did apparently way too much damage that he was meant to do, and if he actually kept that damage, then I'd probably move him some spots higher. But then his critical bleeds were broken. Now he's fixed. Now he's working properly. And we have seen that he is capable of doing some incredible things. All in all, though, I am finding it difficult to rank him above the champions that I'm going to be talking about later, just because of how new he is to the buff champion list. The fact that we have seen more from the champions above, because they have had way more time to kind of prove themselves, showcase themselves in our daily routines. And I, without a doubt, think that HAWKEYE has all the potential in the world to move up in this list in upcoming months. But that has to be factual. That has to be done with proven feats, with proven jobs, how useful he turns out to be for KINGPIN, whether anybody uses him in Alliance War or Alliance Quest, and things like that. But I do like his buff. I liked it enough that I took him to rank 2. I still have obviously yet to kind of fully take advantage of this character. There is one side note which I wanted to say, that that new slowing down time mechanic is very cool and it's very fun, and I'm happy that it does exist in the game. But ironically, it does kind of make him worse as a character, or at the very least harder to use, because if you would be getting both of the benefits from those special attacks, as in like if you had a guaranteed perfect release, then he would be much more user-friendly and easier to play. Now that you have an opportunity to fail that, ironically, it kind of makes him somewhat, you know, harder to play, therefore not necessarily as good, because there's no guarantee anymore. I just figured it's quite an interesting mention there, but in general, I do think HAWKEYE is capable of doing quite some awesome things. Just wish they didn't necessarily take away as much of his damage, and just wish that they didn't, you know, reduce his power drain on level 1. All the other stuff, I do like a lot about this guy. I think he's definitely capable of some very cool things. Now let's move on to spot number 14, and spot number 14 is a champion that got memed to infinity and beyond, and I actually absolutely love him now. Perhaps one of the reasons why I am still capable of this love is because I have been playing this game with the sound effects off for pretty much the entire existence of this game, because one can't deny it's impossible to play Howard the Duck with sound on. Either way, after the changes, he has become way more potent of a champion, way more predictable. You know exactly what is going to happen, how he is going to do it. And he has some very unique abilities in his kit. He is arguably the easiest champion to gain buffs and place debuffs with, and maintain a ton of buffs and ton of debuffs on the opponent, because they expire one at a time. There are obviously a few kind of criticisms. One of the things is I kind of wish he didn't have the pre-fight ability, because I always forget to apply it. I just kind of wish it was an automated thing for most part, but you know, it is what it is. It's just a minor gripe there. But perhaps one of the biggest things, all in all, I'm saying it on purpose because there was one jerkwad who was being very fussy of me using the phrase all in all in previous video, and then he decided to spam my comment section with like 19 comments saying all in all. Well, just so you know, I saw them, and you're a dick. Now you're banned on my channel. Either way, let's move on. That synergy with Bishop. If that was in his base kit, I think Howard the Duck would be significantly better as a champion. Because there's only currently 3 other champions in a game that are capable of removing prowess effects. Obviously, there are more champions that can get rid of buffs, but we're talking specifically about prowess and prowess effects, also including passive prowess. Right now, those would be Psycho Man, Nimrod, and War Machine with his level 1. Howard the Duck is 4th, but he does require synergy for it. If this was in his base kit and he didn't need that synergy, it would be significantly easier to benefit from this ability in like Alliance Wars or Alliance Quest, or just in general pretty much anywhere, and that would make him quite noticeably more valuable, especially right now, because I have a good feeling that that ability to get rid of prowess effects is becoming more and more important, and I would have absolutely loved if he had that in his base kit. But it's still a good thing that it exists in the first place, and definitely worth noting and worth shouting out. At the moment, placing him in 14th as a quick side caveat as well, that he's arguably one of the most awesome champions for incursions. He's an absolute incursions powerhouse and so fun to play in that game mode. I just wish the game mode wasn't as trash. I wish the game mode was, you know, somewhat important, but a good little duck now, I would say. Right, let's move on. Spot number 13. We have still plenty of champions to cover, and it is quite tricky to keep talking for such long periods of time. But moving on to spot number 13 is a champion that I have taken to rank 3 myself, and that is the Hood. Now, obviously, we are all aware of the whole drama surrounding Hood, and he ironically was a champion buffed in 2020 and in 2021. But anyhow, right, so Hood, at the moment, kind of gets the best of the both worlds, because he did manage to retain his Fate Seal on level 2, which is an extremely useful bit of utility. He has excellent buff control now with the Fate Seal, with the staggers that he has active. His invisibility mechanic I do quite like. The downside is that it's bugged. Unfortunately, it's a sad reality of the game that if I have to go down the list of 31 champions buffed and do a quick count, I would have to say that, say, about 60% of the champions that got buffed this year, or 50% champions that got buffed this year, still have some bugs associated with them, beneficial or not, but it's just reality. And with Hood is the fact that frequently you get hit phasing the second hit, which is actually very annoying, very troublesome, where your phase is meant to be guaranteed for first 2 hits with no synergies. Because you start with 120% chance, then you have 100% chance, and then obviously it goes down to 80 and so on and so forth. And you often get hit even though you're supposed to have 100% phase chance. So it's just frustrating. That put aside, ignoring all of that stuff, I think the one downfall that I have with Hood, why I can't necessarily put him higher even though I would like to, is the fact that his loaded bullets and the hex pistol mechanic is a persistent charge. In majority of the situations where I end up using Hood, it's fairly tricky to maintain the amount of bullets, and more often than not, I end up doing 2 fights with him, or a fight with him if it's a longer fight, and then enter the next fight with like 5 bullets loaded or 6 bullets loaded, and then obviously his damage output kind of significantly drops, and it just becomes whole different kind of finicky fight. Now, on the bright side, even without bullets, you can still maintain large amount of his utility with his phasing, with his buff control, so on and so forth. But it is definitely annoying to be going in a fight with kind of like an empty clip. I just wish he started every fight with 28 bullets, and that's it. But it is what it is. Things that definitely help Hood as a Mystic Champion is obviously also his synergies with many awesome champions. Like we can see there, synergy with King GROOT, synergy with Mole Man, synergy with Mojo. He has very powerful synergy with KINGPIN, and obviously he's part of the Ghost Trinity as well. As a quick side note, just so you guys know, the synergy is not bugged. The synergy works perfectly fine. Hood's does take away all damage from Ghost while Ghost's phasing. The problem is with the game engine and the fact that the game does not let you dash back quickly enough to be phased at the time recoil would trigger. So everybody always asking, why don't you talk about Hood and Ghost synergy bug, and you know, when they're going to fix the synergy bug. Synergy is not bugged. Synergy is perfectly fine. The reason you can't phase recoil is because the game engine itself is screwed over, and once Kabam fixes the problems with the game engine, that issue should go away all on its own as well. Just a quick side note there. Let's move on. Spot number 12. Spot number 12 is going to go to Nebula. Another champion that I have taken to rank 2. Another champion that I absolutely love and enjoy. A champion with a fair amount of weaknesses, however, that kind of got glossed over at the time the buff went live. And I do feel that Nebula, unfortunately, was one of those champions that kind of got a little bit overhyped when she got buffed. And now that the honeymoon phase is over, people have a much more realistic look at her. And she's still a very, very good champion. Everything that she does now, she does better than she used to. And it's actually viable and, you know, reasonably efficient compared to how it was. As in, you gain your charges quicker. If need be, you can get to level 3 and you can bypass the whole, you know, holding block thing. And she's sturdier now. All of those are amazing and good and helpful things. But effectively, she does exactly the same things as she used to do. She just does them slightly better. But now that she's a triple immune robot champion that can reduce ability accuracy of other robot champions, access to power control, and a ton of shock damage, she is a force to be reckoned with. I do wish that they kind of went a bit further with the buff and gave her an actual way how to gain her charges without needing to hold block or getting to level 3. Something maybe like Sasquatch, where if you finish a combo with a medium hit or on your 4th light hit, you gain 2 charges or something of the sort. I think it would be extremely helpful to kind of completely detach her from mandatorily having to charge that heavy attack. But in general, I think she is very potent, very powerful champion towards the top of tech class. And I have been able to benefit from her already in like variant 8. And it is definitely extremely satisfying to get those major attack increases in Cav EQ as well. So yeah, I do like Nebula. I think she's an awesome champ. I think she still does have her drawbacks because I didn't change her all that much. But they have definitely been kind of minimized compared to how it used to be. Now, spot number 11. Spot number 11 is going to belong to, again, a champion that I have already taken to rank 2, likely going to be one of my next rank 3s. That is Bishop. And Bishop actually has become one of the scariest defenders as well. Because in between those incinerates and him dealing that, you know, passive damage if you happen to place incinerate or shock or bleed on him, it's just a dodgy little guy with his level 2 not being that easy to dex, and obviously level 1 also being fairly tricky to dex. And it is always kind of like a fun, scary time fighting Bishop, especially on some specific nodes. In general, you do have decent answers, but on some specific nodes, he has been a major pain in the butt. But the things that I do like about Bishop now more than ever is that he has his, like, you know, increased damage. Overall, his prowesses have gotten more potent, and he can start the fight already with like 2 bars of power. Then you just drop in a couple of parries and then just absolutely nuke down the opponent. The access to incinerate now is definitely another useful plus for the champion. I do not like the fact that they took away his power gain on parries. That's kind of annoying slightly. Wish he still had it. But but definitely very good champion. I also like the fact that they changed his regeneration, and now he is able to actually gain buffs, and specifically regeneration buffs on demand. And there aren't many champions in the game who can do that. If you ever need to gain a buff to like trigger a node or something, it's very easy to do with Bishop. And also for some nodes, or for some mutant KVQ nodes, for instance, specifically, they kind of insist on you gaining the regeneration. And Bishop is arguably the best champion for that now in the game, because only thing you need to do is land one parry and hold block for a bit, and you can get up to like 5 regeneration buffs. So that's kind of cool. I like that. Right, moving on. We're getting in our top 10, and every single champion in this top 10 is going to be somebody's favorite champion. I can guarantee you. Every single champion that I'm going to mention in this top 10, somebody is going to say, should have been first or should have been second. But again, I can't please everybody. That's why I am just trying to reflect my own personal views and valuations of this game, not yours necessarily. Right, and in spot number 10, I'm placing Angela. Now, I did take my Angela to rank 3 as well, because I do think she is worth it. She's very Liquid Courage Double Edge friendly, which is something I always enjoy in a champion. She gains a ton of buffs, and they didn't change much about Angela, but it made world of a difference. The most noticeably, the ability to basically ignore all of the damaging debuffs, specifically debuffs, and that is important to note. Her abilities do not work on passive effects, but I love the fact that it works also on degeneration. Therefore, that automatically covers a lot of matchups on nodes that otherwise might have been somewhat tricky. On top of that, she can basically ignore nullify. She has enough buffs. She is quite SIG dependent. If you want to use her to the fullest potential, you want to get her to like SIG 180. If you do have her at lower SIG, then you want to pair her up with Odin in most of the cases to kind of like account for those troubles. But they also gave her ability to parry non-contact attacks, which is not the biggest deal, but the fact that she can ignore auto block now can definitely be helpful. Also, the fact that she has access to armor breaks has been quite helpful in majority of the cases. In some of the matchups, it is annoying and detrimental, but in a majority of the cases, it has been quite awesome. Which those armor breaks were more potent and lasted a bit longer, but it is what it is. However, overall, they gave her somewhat more damage, and this extra piece of utility definitely made all the difference in the world. And at the moment, Angela is a very, very, very solid cosmic champion that, again, I think many accounts would benefit having access to. The only issue at the moment is the fact that she does require super high SIG to kind of perform at her best. And she's in that weird spot where I don't necessarily recommend SIGing her up over some of the other top cosmic champions. But also because of that, once people have more availability of 6-star 6 stones, I think her popularity will increase overall. Right, let's move on to spot number 9, which is another cosmic champion, and that is Venompool himself. Now, Venompool stands in a very interesting place in the game right now, and definitely gaining a lot of attention due to his compatibility with map 8, mainly, I would say, because he's very friendly with a ton of nodes in map 8 in general. He's able to cover some tricky matchups in a game that have appeared recently, like Penny Parker, who is one of the more annoying defenders in general. Right. Some of the best things about Venom are also some of the things that can kind of halt his progress, and that is the fact that up until now we have looked at Venom as a dominant symbiote and as a dominant variant champion in general. And if you take a look at it, then Venompool actually does every single variant that Venom did, and does variant 8, which Venom cannot. Therefore, if you go tick per tick, then technically Venompool is the variant king now, champion that is able to fully kind of enter and participate in most variants. However, since variant fights are relatively short and Venompool is not necessarily the best sprinter champion, he does prefer longer fights. I think in half the scenarios, you'd still probably be better off bringing in Venom than Venompool. But fact of the matter is that he is a superbly helpful champion for anybody of you looking to do more variant content. On top of that, despite Venompool being the ramp-up champion, there are several ways how he can shorten his ramp-up, and that especially goes far in the matchups where you are able to benefit from his Nullify on level 1s, where you can gain additional 50 cooking meter extremely quickly. So if you bring in Venompool against buff-heavy champions, you can ramp him up quite fast, and overall, I do think that he's a champion whose value in the game is stably increasing, and he's already kind of like a mainstay for a lot of people in their daily lives. And I like that. I think the buff was definitely successful. I wish it was a bit more snappy, a bit faster, but I do think it is still a very solid addition to the game, and hence he is ranked as highly as he is. Moving on to spot number 8, we are still in the Cosmic class. So Cosmic class here has a solid streak of, what, 3 champions in a row, right? And with the Cosmic class, this time around, it's actually another quite funny story with Odin, because Odin is not only a champion that's released in 2021, Odin is a champion that's also buffed in 2021, and thank God he was. The initial version of Odin was quite pitiful. And say what you will, and obviously Odin, in my opinion, doesn't necessarily still do the justice to our expectations of what an all-father should be able to accomplish in the game. However, once we kind of cut down that connection with Marvel Comics and look at this bearded uncle, you know, Santa's cousin, the way he should be looked at as in a standalone character in this game, it is very hard not to appreciate everything he does and everything he represents. He has very solid damage output, very easy to gain and maintain True Strike for pretty much the entire fight. He can gain tons of buffs, dish out tons of damage, is extremely sturdy champion, has moderate amounts of utility that can come into play, and he is just kind of one of those fairly straightforward, fairly practical champions to use. And then obviously he does have his party tricks with his pre-fight abilities that can further enhance a bunch of champions to, well, you know, significantly more potent power and efficiency levels. And therefore, I do believe that Odin is a champion that pretty much everybody should want to have access to. He might not be a champion that you bring in every quest for every fight, but he's definitely a champion that every account should want to have access to. At the moment, he's probably my most wanted champion. I do not have as a 6-star, and I hope to get him quite soon. If not the most wanted, then definitely in the top 3. So, spot number 8 goes to Venom. Sorry, not Venom, Odin, my bad. But let's move on. Finally, away from the Cosmic class, and this is where the previous video cut out, more or less. Is Miles Morales. Now, Miles Morales, initially, most of the people didn't quite realize how good that buff is going to be, myself included. I did, however, find things that I did like about the champion, and I did enjoy using him a ton to a point where I already took him to rank 2 about 2 hours after the buff went live. However, the longer time passed, the more and more people figured out and realized exactly how broken this guy is and can be, especially with Kabam having the, at this point, I don't know how else to call it, but some sort of sick pleasure fetish to spam unblockable nodes in pretty much every single piece of content they are releasing. And Miles is the perfect answer for that. And Miles is a better standalone champion than majority of the niche specific use champions. But largely for most of the people, I think that is how he is going to function. Like a Ronan, like a Dr. Octopus, or whoever. When you have a very specific problem, very specific issue, you bring in this guy and he just deals with it better than anything else because he can never get hit, pretty much. That's about it. That's as broken as it can get. And the fact that we see so much unblockable spammed everywhere just means that we're going to see more and more Miles Morales, you know, in live stream clears, in videos, and cheese showcases and stuff like that. If opponent is unblockable, then Miles is an absolute indestructible god in most of the cases. And yeah, every champion, every summoner, in my opinion, needs a Miles Morales now. Because I have a good feeling that Kabam is not going to stop spamming unblockable. Right. So that was spot number 7. Let's move on to spot number 6. And spot number 6 is actually pretty much my favorite champion in the game right now, or one of my favorite champions in the game. That's King GROOT. That's Daddy King GROOT himself. He's such a powerhouse right now. He's so good. He's one of my most used champions day to day. I used him a fair amount for 7.3 exploration. I used him an absolute ton for 7.4. And on top of that, he is in basically every day in my AQ team as well, because at this point at Sig 141 he's pretty much immortal. Heals so much. But yeah, it's again one of those buffs that didn't do too much to buff him, just kind of made everything he already did more effective, and it shows. It shows. I love the fact the understated value of permanent armor breaks that he gives, because there are a lot of champions now that can shrug off you know, debuffs quicker or whatever else you have. The fact that his armor breaks can be temporary or permanent based on what you need. His super long lasting poisons, his incredible regeneration, then he has bleed immunity, and on top of all of that, he's also immune to power drain and power burn effects, which make him very suitable for plenty of fights against like Penny Parker, for instance. The whole malice mechanic, I have been enjoying like the way that works as well. And yeah, no, I don't have much to say. The guy's fairly straightforward, extremely powerful. Arguably one of the most sustainable champions in the game, and I have been getting an absolute ton of use out of this guy and been loving every single moment of it. King GROOT's awesome now. Don't care if you disagree. He's a beast. And now top 5. And again, if it was true for top 10, then it's definitely true for top 5, where every single name I'm about to mention is going to be somebody's favorite. And spot number 5, a champion that sparked his own religion, Diabolord. And then there was the whole every champion gets his glasses thing going around. But yeah, no, the Church of Diablo is a very real thing, and there's very good reason for it. Diablo is also ironically a champion that kind of made you think about how all over the place Kabam is. Because when you looked at Daredevil Hell's Kitchen's buff, he got his regeneration rate reduced by 60%, I believe, or something like that, because he had the ability to place a debuff on himself for majority of the fight, not even entire fight, and therefore Kabam deemed Daredevil Hell's Kitchen regeneration ability too powerful. And then they released Diablo, who takes no poison damage, regens a ton throughout the entire fight, and has a ton of regeneration abilities in his own kit on top of it all. At this point, he stands very close to King GROOT as one of the most sustainable champions in the game. Now, my 6th star, unfortunately, is Unawakened. I do hope to awaken him in near future. Otherwise, I might just end up giving him a Mystic Awakening gem at some point. But it's just incredibly versatile, awesome Mystic champion. What I like most about him is that you can kind of decide how you want to run him and which pre-fight abilities you activate, because you can use him as a standard Mystic champion that has very potent nullification abilities, or you can try to benefit from him in matchups where opponents do energy damage and you're going to be able to heal back a huge portion of it, or you can just decide to go completely stun immune or immune to armor break effects, which also can be super useful, or use none of them and just have the maximum damage output from the start of the fight. Tons of poison damage, tons of crazy wombo combos, tons of healing. Crazy good buff. Diablo and Scarlet Witch Sigil basically are the two champions that kind of saved Mystic class this year, because and Hood, I guess I should say, because everything else that they did there just kind of sucked. Especially the new champions, like we have Purgatory, Mangog, Chavez, so it's just so bad. But Diablo is so good. Diablo is so good and so useful, and I absolutely love mine. I love the fact that he's a Mystic champion that embraces Liquid Courage Double Edge, and yeah, no, definitely, absolutely amazing champion. Well deserving top 5 spot, and as I said, I'm sure that there will be people yelling at me for not placing him in first or second place. But there's good reason for that. And speaking of good reasons, let's move on to spot number 4. And in spot number 4, I'm going to be placing Mr. Fantastic. I think Mr. Fantastic is, well, possibly deserving even a 3rd spot. Maybe. Or even higher. I don't know. This is a point where all 4 champions in the top, I was unsure about how to rank them. All 4 of them are absolute winners. All 4 of them are absolute bangers. And it still absolutely amazes me how many people are sleeping on this guy. This guy's so strong. And so many people just ignore it. And I can't wrap my head around as to why. Mr. Fantastic is fucking incredible. Has so much versatility in situations you wouldn't even think about. The fact that he can reduce opponents' special attack chip damage to nothing can be so helpful in like high attack matchups. The fact that he can prevent them from gaining any meaningful amount of power. The fact that you can reverse healing or power gain. The fact that you make their damage over time effects up to 75% less potent and therefore quite frequently end up healing by suicide masteries. It's just so many things in one champion that the more you play with this guy, the more awesome things you find about this guy. And you don't need any synergies at all for him. Obviously, he does have several awesome synergies that give him more versatility and utility, but even without any synergies, he's one of the most versatile champions in the game. In my personal opinion, a definite top 3 science champion as he stands right now in the game. Standalone, and that would be even before we're looking at his pre-fight abilities and the fact that he can effectively help any champion absolutely destroy Dr. Doom, or just help you deal with a ton of problematic fights because of the power gain or one thing or another. Crazy powerful champion. I did not see his buff coming because he was already extremely powerful, but after his buff, dude's just pure magic. It's kind of ironic since he's all about science, but he's made of magic. Anyways, let's move on to top 3. And top 3 is again one of the champions that I use most in the game right now, and the guy just absolutely blitzes through everything. Also want to note that it is extremely important that we acknowledge the fact that he currently is not functioning as he's meant to be, nor is the champion in the 2nd place. However, these issues have existed in the game for like 6 months plus, so it's at this point it's pretty much a 50-50 chance whether Kabal will ever try to even fix them or will just let them slide like they did it with Kamala Khan and a bunch of other champions. Because the thing that is messed up about Ultron is his level 3 if you have the synergy active, and then in long fights he becomes an absolute Terminator. But even that taken away, which does not matter in a casual fight. It does not matter in 500k, 600k, 700k health pool fights. It really doesn't. It only matters in like Labyrinth and Abyss of Legends type fights. So that issue taken away, he's still absolutely bonkers, crazy. There are 2 weaknesses of a champion that I'd say. Number 1 is him against bleed immune non-mutant champions. He would be so much better as a champion if he would degenerate not specifically mutant champions, but bleed immune champions, or mutants and bleed immunes, because his damage output is 3rd in bleed immune matchups if they are not mutants. That put aside, if you don't bring him in against bleed immune champions, he has some of the filthiest damage in the game, combined with tons of utility. His immunity is very sustainable, like very reliable, double regeneration that can let you save so many potions. And the second kind of annoyance of him is just the fact that you do really want to play him with the synergy. If you do not bring this synergy, he's still capable of outputting a ton of damage, but then you restrict it to your level 2s, which is kind of annoying because level 2 doesn't necessarily do anything else afterwards. You know, there's no stun, there's no power drain, which you can find on level 1 or level 3. But you can still gain a ton of damage, so if need be, you can bring him in at like AQ by himself, for sure. You're just going to want to use your level 2s instead. But ULTRON is just a beast now. I have been using him a ton in 7.3, 7.4, have tried him out in AQ before we switched up to map 8. At the moment, he doesn't quite fit my map needs, my path needs, but I'm sure he is working fantastically for plenty of you as well. And I also like the fact that actually his synergy partners aren't too bad, like bringing Hulkbuster or whoever, you know, it's not too bad selection of champions. And he definitely is one of my go-to champions now for a ton of different content. In fact, I just slide both him and Hulkbuster in. They complement each other well enough. And ULTRON is an absolute hero now, at least in my opinion. Such a good apocalypse killer as well. I could talk about ULTRON for like 20 minutes. I'll just stop here. So good. And top 2 champions. Top 2 champions that got buffed in 2021 are both of skill class. I can't really decide which one I like more. Therefore, I'm just gonna go with who I have used more recently, because I use both of them a ton. I really do. And both of them are insanely amazing. And it is Mole-Man and KINGPIN. The way I look at them is fairly simple. Mole-Man is better for most things if you run Liquid Courage Double Edge. He's still usable without them, but when it comes to valuing Mole-Man against KINGPIN, I think Mole-Man wins when you run Liquid Courage Double Edge. I think KINGPIN wins when you don't. Both of these champions are still good, even if you're running not the perfect mastery setups. So you can still get a ton out of KINGPIN, even if you run Liquid Courage Double Edge, especially in longer fights. And you can still get a ton of value out of Mole-Man if you don't run Liquid Courage Double Edge. Statistically, however, majority of the people, or more people, don't play Liquid Courage Double Edge. So I'm going to put Mole-Man in second, even though I value basically them equally at this point. And the dude is just insane. And with Mole-Man, again, he does have a bug, if you will, where he keeps his true accuracy when he enters Frenzy, if he does so under 10 Monster Mass. However, that has been in the game for like 8 or 9 months. At this point, you know, it would be hard to find a reason why allow that to maintain in the game for such long period of time if they do not intend to keep it. So I do think that it is meant to stay there. Again, take that with a grain of salt. All in all, champion with guaranteed crits, ton of bleed, access to shock, immunity to shock, additional abilities to shrug off debuffs. Unfortunately, not permanent. It is something that you must sacrifice for damage if you want to enter Frenzy. But you also get unblockable level 2s, and you just gain ability to block unblockables and heavies if need be. And the man's just crazy. The man is just crazy good. One of the best true accuracy champions. One of the best away counters in the game. Just brutally good. There's not much else to say. Start a fight, drop a heavy, get hit on a block, destroy the opponent. Crazy good. And then we have KINGPIN. KINGPIN that also got a buff that just becomes more and more useful. The best thing about KINGPIN is that even without Hood synergy, he always gets rid of debuffs, eventually. Even if you do not shrug something off upon the time of activation, once you get 8 debuffs, all of them always get converted into overpower buff. And that means that in any debuff heavy matchup, he turns into an absolute cheese god, and you don't even need like hood synergy or anything else. Things that make this guy insanely amazing is number one, his tankiness, especially combined with his level 1 rotation, where you reduce opponents' ability accuracy and their attack by like 50% attack reduction, 65% ability accuracy reduction. And then if you have to eat, I don't know, like level 3, you can just start charging heavy attack and increase your physical resistance, and you hardly take any damage there. Then you obviously have super easy access to unstoppables with your heavy attacks and level 2s. Unblockable special attacks as well on top of that. And then your ability to heal throughout the fight, increase your combat power rate. Very, very solid damage. And KINGPIN has proved himself again as one of the most versatile champions in his applications. Largely due to the fact that Kabam loves nodes that inflict a ton of debuffs recently. And KINGPIN thrives on that. KINGPIN is one of the MVPs for hazard shift stuff, or all of those not close encounters, but long distance relationship, I think, and all of the other nodes that basically inflict a ton of debuffs to you. Plus, there are more and more champions that are very, very willing to inflict a ton of debuffs on you, like Null. Like, he's the perfect Null counter, for instance. General, the only sad thing about KINGPIN is that his damage is bugged. In reality, he should be hitting significantly harder once you go into like 3 overpower buffs and stuff like that, which is easily accomplishable in debuff heavy matchups. He should be hitting significantly harder. There is something very funny going on with his damage output, and we're not able to get the full picture of it. But even as he stands right now, just an insane powerhouse in the game. So I do think that Mallman and KINGPIN are both worthy of first spot, top 1. It just depends which mastery setup you run more. Which is also why ULTRON is such a perfect rank top 3 position, because he doesn't care. ULTRON's perfect with and without Liquid Courage Double Edge. Anyhow, that's it. Now we have gone through all 31 buffs. So we can move on here. Here we are. Top 15 as I had them listed here in today's video. I know the video took a while. I hope you guys enjoyed it. My mouth is absolutely dry. If this recording fails, I'm not doing it again. Either way, that is it for now, and I'm gonna catch you guys soon. See ya. Hello there guys, and welcome back to the channel. So we have all the information about